Hello, Bakut. So this is my feedback to your evidence. Well, it's not really a paragraph, but to your evidence notes from last week. First of all, let me say this looks good to me as notes. That's a very good start. But in the exam, you have to write a paragraph. Actually, you have to write two paragraphs. One is the identification paragraph, where you will identify the supporting idea and the evidence used to support that. Remember, that's the first step, 75 to 100 words, and then the next step is to actually write the evidence paragraph, which should be 150 to 200 words. So since you didn't write one, I cannot really evaluate it, but let me just look at the evidence, the notes that you've made here. And these look pretty good to me. So you could use that as a very solid foundation to write a paragraph. So you're saying that the evidence is sufficient. He's using. Now, what is the supporting idea though? Racism and age discrimination. So you need to clarify this a little bit more, right? For instance, you can say the speaker claims that there is systemic discrimination in internship programs. The evidence he uses to support this claim includes all of these things. So that would be your identification paragraph. And then in the evidence evaluation paragraph, you will say this evidence is or is not sufficient, blah blah blah, because of what? Now here you've said it's sufficient. Okay, fine. If you wanted to say that it's not sufficient, what would be a good reason to include? Remember, he's making a very general claim about, he's saying there is systemic bias all across internship programs, all across American states, all over America. So that's a very general claim. And to prove such a general claim, generally, you would need quite a lot of evidence. So you could actually choose to say that the evidence used here is not sufficient. I mean, just one email from a company, from the Oracle company, citation of the Civil Rights Code, references to Facebook, a few Twitter replies, and another advertisement for Indians only. These are just isolated pieces of evidence. That does not prove that all over America there is systemic bias, right? And here, in your evidence paragraph, you could add, the speaker could have included, and then say what? He could have included surveys, studies, meta-analysis, concrete data, proving, let's say, the percentage of how many companies, how many internships in America directly, specifically target minorities. In other words, they're discriminatory against majorities. This is the guy's claim, right? So you can say that the speaker should have or could have included this, and that. Okay, that's part of, in your sufficiency segment of the evaluation paragraph, you could easily say what he could have included. Okay. The speaker's evidence is relevant. Yeah, I would agree with this. In this case, yes, he is showing concrete data, examples where these companies really are targeting specific minority groups and just unabashedly excluding others. So I would say that it's relevant. I would agree with your point here. Now, as far as representativeness, it is representative, you're saying, because the speaker cited it as an example. All large IT companies have, well, yeah, that's the thing. Does it prove that all large IT companies have racism and discrimination? And here we're not talking about generally companies being racist. We're just talking specifically about diversity programs, which are some of them are internship programs. Now, just because he uses one or two examples, does that prove that the average company, or that example is typical of all American or most American companies? Here you could attack it and say that it's not representative, right? It's not really, it does not necessarily represent the average or typical internship job advertisement, right? So in this case, I think it's easier to say that it's not representative. But overall, from what I can see here, you have some good notes. Now you have to actually go ahead and write the paragraph. You can go back to the model. There is a model for week 11. Go back and look at it. Really study it very closely to try and learn how to write that paragraph, both paragraphs, the identification and evaluation. And there is another model coming up next week. So those two should be able to help you. And we will continue practicing in class in the small group tutorials next week as well. So you'll have another round of practice. So now is the time to really practice. So I would recommend next week try and write a full paragraph just to see how it's going to go. Okay, I hope this is helpful to you, Bakut. These notes are quite good actually. Okay, good luck with your work.